I now call this meeting to order, November 12th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. I would ask everyone to rise, if you're able, for the singing of the national anthem, O Canada. This is the roll call for November 12th, 2025, organizational meeting, public session. Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Johnston.
Present.
Trustee Labonte.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McDonald.
Present.
Trustee Parisien.
Present.
Trustee Robertson.
Present.
Trustee Schooler.
Present.
Trustee Steinberg.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Gibson.
Present.
Student Trustee Musa.
Present.
We have quorum. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the customary and traditional lands of the Indigenous peoples of this territory. Item 6.0, approval of the agenda for the organizational meeting, moved by Trustee Labonte, seconded by Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the organizational meeting agenda of November 12th, 2025. Please cast your votes online. Trustee Parisien, just waiting on your vote. Not sure if there's some.
Sorry. It never popped up, but I'm in favor.
Thank you.
In favor as well.
Carries. Moving on to 7.1, the election of chair. So as the secretary of the board, I'm going to open the floor for nominations. As the secretary of the board, I'm going to open the floor for the nominations for the position of chair of the Upper Canada District School Board. Jamie Schooler's name was placed in nomination by Linda Johnston for the position of chair. This nomination was received on October 30th at 8:30 p.m. At this point, I'm going to make a call for further nominations. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? There being no further nominations, we now have a motion moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Robertson, that the declared nominations be closed for the position of chair. Please cast your votes online. This motion carries unanimously, and there being no nominations for the position on 3 calls and the motion carrying, I now declare the nominations closed. At this point, I will turn things over to our newly elected chair, and I ask you to join me in welcoming back to the role.
Well, thank you, Mr. Director. I'd like to just say a few brief words at this time. I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge and thank my colleagues around the board table for their hard work and support during the past year. I am pleased to be able to serve once again in this capacity, but truthfully, it is a privilege for me to be a part of this team and to serve in any capacity. It is my sincere belief that we have an outstanding team here that starts with our director, Director Ferguson. His leadership continues to focus on student achievement and well-being, and all of his decisions are grounded in those two guiding principles. We are fortunate to have a senior staff whose talents, experience, and dedication to the Upper Canada District School Board have allowed our organization to maintain and to develop innovative and effective educational programs that advance the educational experience that our students and families receive here in Upper Canada, all while being fiscally responsible with the funding that we receive from the provincial government. Our team, led by our Chief Business Officer, Superintendent Hobbs, and monitored by our Audit Committee, led by Trustee MacDonald, we know how to make proper use of taxpayers' money and construct balanced budgets. The metrics that are used to assess a board's effectiveness continue to trend upward, which is due to the leadership of our senior team, as well as the outstanding work that our educators are doing in our schools. It is a privilege to be a part of a team of trustees who passionately represent their home communities, but bring that passion to bear in decisions that are made to support boys and girls in all the schools and all the communities that are served by the Upper Canada District School Board. The wealth of knowledge, experience, and concern that you trustees, my fellow trustees, bring to this board table have helped me to grow in my role as a trustee. I have learned from each one of you, and for that I am thankful. Finally, even though they don't want me to do this, I would like to give a special shout out to Lisa Workman and Vice Chair Johnston. Lisa, you do so much to keep us informed and organized, and we really appreciate the hard work that you put into your position. As an example, the recent introduction of Diligent was made so much easier by the preparation that you did on our behalf. Vice Chair Johnson, I owe you a special acknowledgement of my gratitude for your hard work behind the scenes. I'm not sure if everyone knows about the amount of time that the Vice Chair spends researching and formulating reports that are comprehensive and professional and grounded in ministry mandates and board policy. An example is the tremendous amount of work that you did on the director's performance appraisal process. We all owe her a great deal of gratitude for her dedication to the work that she does on our behalf. So, as we enter a new and turbulent and somewhat uncertain year of service, I certainly want to thank all of you for your passionate interest in public education, and I look forward to whatever the future holds for this exemplary team of which we are all members. Thank you. Now, continuing on with the meeting, I am opening the floor for nominations for the position of Vice Chair for the Upper Canada District School Board. Linda Johnson's name was placed in nomination by Jamie Schooler for the position of Vice Chair. That nomination was received October 30th at 1:23 p.m. Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chair? I ask a second time, are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair? And finally, are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair? So I need a motion moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Steinberg, that the declared nominations be closed for the position of vice chair. Would you please cast your vote online? Okay. That motion is carried unanimously. So as the only candidate nominated, do you accept this position?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this, we don't have to do this, right? No, it's the straw, or do we?
No, you don't have to do anything. Right, just give them a chance to say something.
All right. Would you like an opportunity to say a few words, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair Schooler. I could actually just say ditto to everything that Chair Schooler said, but I want to thank each and every one of you for placing your trust in me. And as he said, I've learned from each and every one of you, and that includes student trustees as well. And it's been an honor to have the privilege of working with the senior team who have been exceptionally supportive. So I'd like to thank you all. And I'm really proud of our board and everything that everybody stands for at this table. So thank you. Thank you for your support.
That brings us to item 8.0 for our organizational meeting. It's the adjournment, and it is moved by Trustee Robertson, seconded by Trustee Swan, that the organizational meeting in public session of the Upper Canada District School Board on November 12th, 2025 be adjourned at 6:41 p.m. Would you please cast your vote online? Okay. And that motion carries. Good. So now we are moving into the regular board meeting, public session on November 12th, 2025. And I would call this meeting to order and ask Director Ferguson to do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is your roll call for November 12th, 2025, regular meeting public session. Chair Schooler.
Present.
Vice Chair Johnston.
Present.
Trustee Danaher.
Present.
Trustee Labonte.
Still present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Trustee McDonald.
Present.
Trustee Parisien.
Present.
Trustee Steinberg.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Gibson.
Present.
Student Trustee Musa.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. Item 11, the consent agenda items. Approval of consent agenda items 11.1 to 11.2, moved by Trustee Danaher and seconded by Trustee Labonte, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 11.1 through 11.2 as submitted and confirmed accurate as of November 12th, 2025. Please cast your vote online. And that motion carries unanimously. We're moving now to item 12.1, conflict of interest declarations. Are there any this evening? Seeing none, we move on to item 13.1, a report to the board from private session October 1st, 2025. As per the Education Act, the closing of certain committee meetings, a meeting of a committee of the board including a committee of the whole board, may be closed to the public when the subject matter falls under one of the 5 reasons listed within the Education Act under Section 207, subsection 2. Committee of the whole met in private session October 1st, 2025, and one item was discussed under Section A. One recommendation is being brought forward to the board. Moved by Trustee McDonald and seconded by Trustee Steinberg, thank you, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the 2025-2026 Regional Internal Audit Plan as presented October 1st, 2025 in private session, Committee of the Whole, as identified under resolution number PS 2025, October 1st-002. Please cast your vote online. And that motion carries.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just note, we missed a name on here. Trustee Robertson, our apologies. I think we're using an old form. I know you're present because I'm looking at you, but let's officially do that. Trustee Robertson.
Present and now accounted for.
You can tell you're new because the trustees have been around would have said something, but you were being very polite.
Item 14.1 is the ratification of the appointment of our First Nations trustee representation. Our First Nations representative is appointed by the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education, and a resolution was passed at their meeting of October 15th, 2025. Rose Alma J. McDonald will be sworn in on November 12th, 2025. I have a motion for which I need a mover. Moved by, thank you, Trustee Swan, and seconded by Trustee Danaher, that the Upper Canada District School Board ratify the appointment of Rose Alma J. McDonald as the First Nations representative of the Akwesasne Mohawk Board of Education on the board to sit as a full board member from November 12th, 2025 to October 31st, 2028, subject to the provisions of the Education Act, Section 188 and Regulation 462-97. Please cast your vote online. That motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to Trustee McDonald, and welcome to the board. Item 15.1 is the 2025-26 enrollment update, trends and impacts, and I would ask our Chief Business Officer and Treasurer, Mr. Hobbs, to present that report to the group.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to bring this annual report to the board on behalf of the Planning Department. And it's typically at this time of year, we have an opportunity to catch our breath a little bit and determine how many kids have actually shown up at our door this year compared to what we estimated when we did the budget originally back in June. And tonight, I'm going to perhaps give you a little bit different flavor on it. So what we're going to do tonight, I think, is try to give you a little bit more of a strategic view of enrollments and what's happened over the course of recent history, and also a little bit of what we see on the horizon and what the implications will be for management. So From about 1995 to 2020, UCDSB and its predecessor boards experienced a period that we affectionately know as declining enrollment. Certainly when I joined the board in 2004 and looked at some of the early projections about how enrollment was going to change, it was alarming to say the least. We went from about 40,000 students across our district in the mid-90s to about a bottom of 25,000 students in 2020, which obviously, as you know, has, for those of you who've been around the table for a long time or at the board for a long time, know that we've had some pretty serious adjustments to make over that time as we came to live within that new reality. However, since that time, district-wide enrollment has mostly stabilized. It's projected to remain largely flat to slight growth in the foreseeable future. But what I would say is that flatness that we see laying out in front of us masks hot spots and cold spots within our district where we do have pockets of dramatically increased enrollment, and we do have places that are flat to slightly declining over the past few years. And that, if that pattern continues, that'll necessitate its own adjustments. And we'll just get into this in a little bit more detail as we go through the presentation. So this slide shows you what elementary and secondary enrollments have been historically back to the 90s. And as you can see, back to the left side of the chart, if you add those two lines together, you get just a little over 40,000 students back in the mid-90s. And then from that time on until about 2020, we were in a state of quite precipitous decline all the way up until COVID hit, purely coincidentally, where we ended up sort of bottoming out at around 25,000 students. And as you know, we went through in that period of time successive school closure exercises in order to rationalize our physical space. It entailed quite a significant series of adjustments in all areas of the board for our communities, large and small, across our district, as we grappled with what was purely a demographic change. This wasn't kids that were leaving our board to go to another board. This is just demographics at work, where there was a sort of a baby boom bubble, and that's worked its way through our organization now. As you can see through the little sort of middle band there, the blue band, that's where we sit really right now. And what's happened is we've bottomed out and we've been experiencing some modest growth over the past few years. And as trustees know, because so much of our funding is driven by how many students we have, that actually has an impact on our funding as well. So the more students we have, the more funding we get, the more people we can employ in our local economy, and the better we can serve our communities as well. So looking forward to the rightmost section, that represents the future, and obviously we don't know quite what the future holds, but our planning department works extensively throughout the year on a near continuous basis with neighboring municipalities, works with Statistics Canada to look at what projections are for growth, what housing developments are being planned and approved, and works to sort of adjust their future-oriented projections across our district based on that. We use those projections in a variety of ways, all the way from thinking about what our future staffing needs are going to be, and certainly close to my heart, and you'll hear more about this evening, is we use it extensively for capital planning as we look 15 to 20 years out about where we're going to need schools, where we're going to need new schools, and where we're going to need additions to schools. This is really just a more sort of mathematical or a quantitative view of what you saw in front of you, a little bit of a snapshot at more recent trends. So what you see happening is back in 2019-20, we had just under 18,000 elementary students, and that's grown to just over 19,000 students that we're projecting for 26-27. And under 21 secondary students, around 8,300 students back in 1920, and then working up to 26-27, our projection is around 8,800. So modest growth, not as fast as the decline was, but I think it represents good news for our district, certainly. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, that growth, which looks rather flat when you look at it system-wide, is not represented in our individual families of schools. And what you see here is that we've looked at the change in average daily enrollment in families of schools between the 2019-2020 school year and the 24-25 school year. And what you see on the leftmost side are families of schools that have experienced the most growth in enrollment over that time period. And so what you see obviously at the leftmost bar Since 1920, the Russell family of schools is up by 47% in terms of its enrollment, and then working downward from there, which isn't a surprise to you, to the people who live in these communities. And in fact, what you see on the rightmost side is that the change in enrollment is actually, in some cases, we've experienced a modest decline in some areas. So in Brockville, for example, over the same period of time, about a 10% decline in our average daily enrollment in the Brockville family of schools. And some of you may ask about, is this a demographic trend, or is this a reflection of our ability to compete, if you will, with other school boards, neighboring school boards for students? And the answer is that yes, there is some evidence that kids in some cases are leaving our board for other boards. So on the rightmost side of it, I would say, generally speaking, the observation of our department is that, our planning department is that in some cases, kids are actually choosing other boards to some extent in those areas. And on the leftmost side, there's an equal and even stronger indication that students are disproportionately choosing our board across our district. And we don't have insight at this time into why that is, but I think we take some heart in the fact that that 47% growth you see there is largely it's reflected in our market share there as well in those areas of strength. The next slide just really represents a sort of geographic view of what we just shared with you. So as I mentioned, the areas where we're seeing flat to slight decline, in some cases growth, are the darkest blue areas. Where you see sort of lighter blue is a little bit more modest growth. And then gray, light red, and red are all successively higher rates of growth. And this is, again, over that same 2019 to 2020 time period. And the other caveat I think I would share with you is that that time period also happens to be coincident with the sort of heart of the COVID period, where we saw enormous fluctuations in student enrollments from school to school. In fact, I'm thinking of some schools where there's been times in my career of facilities where we had portables at a school, then we took the portables away and we thought we had too much empty space at the school. And today we're at the very same school, because of these enrollment fluctuations, we're building an addition that's going to more than double the size of the school. And that's all in a period of 10 years. So what I would say is that it's not necessary. If we've seen 47% growth in one particular family of schools over the last 5 years, I would be cautious to assume that it's going to continue at that rate for the next 5 years. And I would be equally cautious to suggest that in areas where we've seen modest decline or flat growth, that it will continue that way. In fact, what we kind of miss from the days of declining enrollment is just the pure predictability of it. What we're seeing now, in fact, is that we're still starting to see some of those enrollment fluctuations shake out a little bit. And as you'll see when I speak to you later this evening on capital, that's caused us to be light on our feet when it comes to actual capital planning, because even from year to year, the future projections change as I think companies deal with return to office mandates and those kinds of things that is having an impact on where people choose to settle their families in our communities as well. So I think that we're keeping an eye on this, and we sort of do a rolling projection looking out, but it's our intention to, again, keep an eye on it for the foreseeable future and adapt accordingly as needs arise. So implications for management, I would say, is that it's, I think, good news for us. It's certainly a relief for those of us who've been through the declining enrollment phase of the board, where it seemed like there was never any good news. There's lots of evidence, I think, that we've got very strong hot pockets of growth across our district that makes it frankly challenging for us to figure out how to accommodate the students in some cases. And in those particular areas, we're really encouraged by the fact that it seems that in addition to demographic trends, there's also evidence that families are deliberately choosing the Upper Canada District School Board. And that's good news for all of us to be on a growth footing rather than on a retraction footing as we've been for the last number of years. And again, I would say forecasting continues to be important because it drives resource allocation. So not only does the number of students have an impact on the funding we get and therefore the resources we can put out, but it also drives our future planning about how we serve those students. So it impacts our staffing levels. and the decisions we're making about staffing. It also obviously impacts our decisions about facilities and how we can go forward and make the best possible case to the Ministry of Education for putting capital in our schools and giving kids the best possible places to learn and our staff the best possible places to work. One of the things I will highlight, and I'll highlight it again in my capital presentation, is I think one of the things that's really exciting for us is over the course of the last 20 years, thinking about how to close schools. And whenever it came time to building a new school, it was always a replacement for an existing school or schools that have been consolidated. And I think we're candidly getting to the point where it's going to be on the horizon the first time we're going to actually have to build a net new school because of enrollment growth in one of our areas, which is a pretty exciting thing for us. As exciting as it always is to build a school, it's always nice to be contemplating one because you got lots of kids. So in summary, after decades, I would just say the UCDSB appears to have exited its long period of declining enrollment and all the ensuing challenges that came with it. We're looking ahead to a period of stability to modest growth across our district, obviously with hot spots and cooler spots across our district. There's going to be all kinds of changes, I think, that are on the horizon or that have happened over the course of the last 5 years and continue to happen about what's happening with immigration policy, what's happening with cost of living, what's happening with housing prices, what's happening with employer return to work mandates across our district. And those factors are all going to have an impact across our district and disproportionately sometimes across our district just because the nature of our communities in our district are so different. And management and the team is, of course, watching closely and responding accordingly as we go forward. And that represents the presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Are there any questions? No questions this evening? All right. Well, thank you again for that report. Most interesting. Moving on to item 15.2, the 2024-25 draft audited consolidated financial statements. And once again, Chief Business Officer Hobbs will be making this presentation. And I guess we'll do the motion first, perhaps, and then open it up for questions and discussion. So moved, if I may, by Trustee McAllister and seconded by Trustee Parisian, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the 2024-25 draft audited consolidated financial statements as presented this evening on November 12th, 2025. So we'll have our discussion and then cast a vote after any questions that folks might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for buying me a second to shift gears. So moving right into the 24-25 financial results. Again, welcome. I'm glad to be back and presenting to you the outcome, our financial outcome for 24-25. Not talking about a forecast for this year, but the actual results for our last fiscal year. Just to walk you through the executive summary, enrollment for 24-25 was up 248 students compared to the projections that informed the original budget. And I know that might be confusing in light of my last presentation, but every year we do projections of enrollment for the upcoming year to inform our budget. We tend to, because they're projections, we can pick a range of values. And sometimes we pick low, sometimes we pick high. And our initial projections for 24-25 were a little bit low. It's always nice to see when more kids show up than we projected because more money flows with them. So that was good news. We had some higher than expected enrollment, some benchmark changes, additional rep funding supports, and that contributed to our revenue for compliance being up by $11.7 million to $458.7 million versus $447 million in the original budget. For trustees around the table that are newer to us, this is often a pattern we see where we pass a budget for the upcoming year in the June timeframe, and then the details of how many students and the funding formula and so on continue to get sort of refined throughout July, August, September, even further into the year. And you'll oftentimes see revenue vary almost immediately into the fiscal year as a result of that. And we try to make sure that the revenue varies in the correct direction, which is upward, as you see here. Expenses for compliance were also up by $10.4 million compared to the original budget. Again, when money flows in, we have more funding flow in. It's our intention to put that money to work for students right away. So most times when money flows in, you'll see a corresponding increase in expenses, as you see here. One of the things I would say, highlight about 24-25 is it was a challenging year for financial management. We had some unexpected expenses, as you know, a significant cyber attack in January of 2025. We had a revenue overstatement or restatement, which I'll talk about momentarily. And we had some severe expense pressure in the facilities area owing to winter weather conditions. I was just talking to a colleague today in the municipal space, and we were both stressing out over snow removal already. And that hopefully won't be as severe this year as it was last year. The bottom line really is that the larger increase in revenue versus expenses results in an in-year operating surplus for compliance purposes of $1.7 million. And trustees will remember when you passed the original budget for 24-25, we were looking at we were projecting a $400,000 surplus. So the actual end year result is actually modestly better than we projected, notwithstanding all those other challenges we faced. And finally, at the end, this year, in-year surplus, as you'll recall, those in-year surpluses we get added to our accumulated surplus, which is the sum total of all previous in-year surpluses. And that means our total accumulated surplus available for compliance will be up to about $33.1 million. This represents about 8% of our GSN operating, or our core ed operating revenue, I should say, for 24-25. And that still places us in the bottom half of school boards in the province for the magnitude of our accumulated surplus as a percentage of our operating revenue. I won't drain this slide. I just put it here because it makes me comfortable, but it helps me with my nervousness. But I do want to emphasize sometimes at this time of year, particularly when you're dealing with starting the 26-27 budget and forecasting for 25-26, that we are still dealing with last year's budget. So these are the actual results for year-end August 31st, 2025, and nothing projection about them. They are fully audited and final. So a little bit more detail for you in terms of the financial results. This slide you know well, and our intention is to show you every year how we got from the original budget, total revenue and expenses, to the year-end results. And this shows you what you saw successively throughout the year, 24-25, from the original budget, the financial forecast we presented, all the way to the second to last column, which is the audited financial statements, which I'm presenting to you this evening. No surprise, what you saw is that the forecasted results throughout the year hovered with a surplus slightly below $1 million. We dipped in the April timeframe down below $1 million into deficit territory because we were unsure at that point about the impact that this costs associated with the cyber attack were going to have on us. As you know, management, we consider it a point of pride, all of us around the table, that we really do try to make adjustments in year to accommodate both the challenges that we have financially and also the opportunities. So when we have challenges like the cyber attack, we look, especially in the administrative departments, where can we curtail or defer spending so that we don't have to have doesn't have an adverse financial impact on the organization. And conversely, when we have good news and there's underspending in areas from time to time, we have the director's work plan, which guides us in where we're going to accelerate we're going to take those opportunities to spend to accelerate programs as well. So in this case, what you see from April 2025 to now is that we've had a successful attempt across our organization to say, hey, are there things that we can do, especially in the administrative areas, that are not going to have an adverse impact on our student learning agenda? Maybe we can defer some expenditures into 25-26, and we can make sure that we end the year with a good result. And so we have, that leaves us with a surplus at the end of 24-25 of $1.7 million for compliance purposes. So it seems like a smallish change on $450 million worth of revenue to have a change in our projected position of only $1.3 million. However, that belies a lot of activity below the surface. And so what I'll do is I'll unpack for you a little bit about what we consider to be the noteworthy sort of changes that occurred between the original budget for 24-25 and the year-end financial results. So the first line is what you see is core ed and tuition fees and related expenses. And so what you see there is an $8.8 million increase in revenue. That's primarily driven by that enrollment, that enrollments were actually higher than what we had originally projected. So to the tune of about 250 students, that results directly in millions of additional dollars. So primarily that $8.8 million in increased revenue is a result of the additional students that came to us. And in addition, the ministry throughout the course of the year, there was a Bill 124 remedy that they were concluding. There were some additional labor agreements that they were concluding. And when the ministry negotiates or concludes these kinds of agreements, if it comes with a price tag, they will flow the funding to us to support those agreements. And so the revenue to support those agreements is also baked into that $8.8 million. No surprise as well that the expenses increased as well by $3.5 million. Primarily, what we found was that was about $5.1 million of that was in increased staffing costs. So the money flows in, we spend it primarily in increased staffing costs. And there was actually a reduction in expenses, about $1.3 million related to non-staffing related expenses. So that would be things like goods and services. And that represents us just sort of curtailing some of those expenses to respond to some of the challenges that we talked about, and a slight reduction in amortization expense. So overall, the net effect, it was about $5.3 million to the good there. One thing I will unpack for you in further detail is this, what we call the mysterious prior period adjustment. And I'll be completely candid with you. In early 24-25, we discovered that there is about a $5.9 million revenue entry that essentially had been double counted, or we had included twice, which meant we had $5.9 million. We had anticipated $5.9 million in revenue, more than we had actually entitled to get. This was actually occurred in 23-24. And we discovered it after the financial statements for 23-24 had already been finalized. So that needed to be rectified. And so we needed to find a way to back out of that. And so this represents basically an acknowledgement that we thought we had $5.96 million that we didn't actually have. So that's why you see a revenue reduction there. And that's something that I'll unpack further on another slide, and happy to take questions on it so you're satisfied that that's been dealt with comprehensively and to the satisfaction of our auditors. Line 3 represents an increase in non-core ed grants. So core ed, again, is the new name for the old GSN, which represents the bulk of our funding, but we also do get funding in the form of other sources like responsive education programs and other sources that represent policy priorities for the government. And what you see here is that the old adage is true. The money flows in for a specific purpose from the government, and we expense it and get it out the door immediately to support students. So that represents a wash there. Even though it's a net zero change, it's important for us to show you that there was that amount of activity, even though the net result is zero. With respect to transportation, there's about a $400,000 decrease in revenue compared to what was originally budgeted. That's really mostly around lower fuel prices, primarily, than was anticipated in the original budget. And excuse me, there was a favorable $2.6 million lower than expected expenses as well. That's really as a result of $1.2 million lower bus contractor costs, which includes reduced fuel costs and some route efficiencies. As trustees will know, we are anticipating in 27-28 a significant reduction to transportation funding to the tune of around 30%. And what we're already doing with STIO is trying to encourage STIO to find efficiencies wherever they can. And this is the start, I think, of their campaign to find some efficiencies to respond to that future funding challenge. With respect to school budgets, revenue was up slightly, again, $600,000. And that was really just a reflection of largely more students and larger allocations to school budgets. However, expenses were down a little bit, and that was a result of just school spending. So oftentimes we provide schools budgets, and they spend it as they see fit to some extent on staff replacement costs, but also all the other things that schools need. And they have the opportunity, unlike most of the areas of our board, to carry any surplus they have over from year to year. So that allows them to not experience a ton of pressure just to spend for the sake of spending at year end. And so what we find sometimes at the end of the year is they've spent a little more or a little less than we originally budgeted, and that's absolutely fine. So we consider that to be normal. Upper Canada Leger Centre and Champions for Kids budgets, again, minor changes here, just associated with the activity of those organizations. What you would consider to be as fundraising for C4K and international education revenue for UCLC. And then again, correspondingly, as they take in funds, they're pushing them out to spend them as well. So very balanced kind of view there, resulting in a net $100,000 contribution to the surplus. And then associated other revenue and expense changes. So in here, there's some cyber insurance recovery. So that includes, I won't speak in too much detail to it, but there's some insurance in there, and there's also the expenses that are associated with the cyber attack recovery, bank interest, and as trustees will recall, when we had at Arkland Public School, when we had a early or a before and after program provider pulled out of that school a couple of years ago, we stepped in to provide a program there, and that's where we're reporting the revenue and expenses in that line as well. So all told, the predominant there of the 1.5 million net negative contribution is primarily the result of expenses that were incurred associated with the cyber attack. So just back to, as I mentioned on the previous slide, there was a issue in 23-24 in which approximately $5.96 million of Bill 124 and labor settlement revenue was double counted in the financial statements. So essentially, we received revenue from the Ministry of Education to the tune of about $6 million in the spring timeframe. In the July timeframe, after the budget was passed, the ministry reversed that $6 million, pulled it back. They put some new numbers in the form, and then they put the $6 million somewhere else as well in the form. And so we didn't discover this until the fall, after the financial statements were concluded, and realized that we had for that year double counted revenue. We weren't the only board in this situation. The finance team immediately reached out to the Ministry of Education to talk to them about the problem. They told us we weren't alone in that boat. And the team also started working with auditors immediately on finding a acceptable solution to remedying this, because essentially what we had to do is say, okay, we have double the revenue we thought. Now we've reported it on financial statements. Now we have to correct it in such a way that as of August 31st, 2025, our balance sheet is correct. So staff worked with the auditors and they worked through a couple of options. They decided, instead of reopening the financial statements for 23-24, they would proceed with what they call a SLAM, or a statement of likely aggregate misstatement, and back out the revenue out of the 24-25 year, which we've done and which I spoke about on the previous slide. And basically what we did is, how do you pull $6 million of revenue out in a given year without having an impact? It was quite a lot of effort, to be candid with you. There were a number of things in our admin departments that we were able to defer or put on hold. And there were also a few things that turned out to the good financially throughout the course of the year. But there wasn't anything that had an adverse impact or a lasting impact on the board, and certainly no short-term or palpable impact to students in any way. So we've actually proceeded through audit committee. Our auditors have reviewed and endorsed this approach, and we're very confident that we're in good shape. So it's been entirely remedied, and with no adverse consequences to the organization and to the satisfaction of the auditors and the Ministry of Education. So we felt that even though there's no net impact to the board, it was important for us to let you know about that, explain it to you fully, and again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about that going forward. So just to sort of get into the last couple of slides, as you know, when we end the year with a surplus, fiscal year with a surplus, that gets added, if you will, to the pile of all previous surpluses and deficits that the board has run. And that's what we call our accumulated surplus. And so what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the board's financial position as at August 31st, 2025, and what our accumulated surplus looks like. And so when we look at the accumulated surplus for the board, trustees will be aware that it has two major components. There's a component that is, we call it this accumulated surplus available for compliance. And this is the portion of the surplus that, in theory, the board can exert some management control over. There's also a portion of it that is externally appropriated and unavailable for compliance. And this is a portion that's really constrained by either statute or accounting convention, and we really have no ability to touch it. And I'll talk to you a little bit about what is included in those pieces as we go forward. The surplus available for compliance, which is the part that we have some management, or I should say you have some management control over, has itself two parts. There's an unappropriated surplus available for compliance, and there's an internally appropriated surplus available for compliance. And the internally appropriated portion of our accumulated surplus is a pot of money, if you will, that previous boards have actually sweatered, if you will, to use the ministry parlance. They've actually placed constraints on what those funds can be used for or protected them. And by contrast, the unappropriated portion has no constraints on it that a previous board has set. And I'll talk a little bit about what those constraints are just as we go forward in the next slide. So as it stands, this slide is intended to show you the evolution of our accumulated surplus from September 1st, 2024, which is the start of the 2024-25 fiscal year, to the end. And so probably the easiest line to get your head around is the blue one, the blue row, row 3. And our total accumulated surplus available for compliance at September 1st, 2024 was $31.4 million. Moving over to the next column, in the 24-25 year, as you just saw, we ran a $1.7 million surplus available for compliance in year. And we add that to the $31.4 million, and we now have a $33.1 million surplus available for compliance. Excuse me. Now, if I work upwards from that, above that $33.1 million, 11.2 of that is internally appropriated. I'll touch on the next slide about what those constraints are. That's constrained. And then moving up further, $21.9 million of that $33.1 million surplus available for compliance is what we call operating, or it's available for compliance, or we also refer to it as being unappropriated, no constraints on it at all. And then on the line 4 is the externally appropriated. So this is there, again, accounting conventions and statutory constraints. And I'll speak a little bit about that. But over the course of the year, we've gone from a $4.5 million deficit on that line up by $10.7 million to 6.2, a positive $6.2 million surplus there. That $10.7 million is primarily driven by the fact that we bought land in Cornwall for the new school over the period of the year. And we actually have to record that on that line in recognition of the fact that we don't depreciate land. So primarily, the biggest factor in the growth of that line throughout the course of the year is that acknowledgement of the purchase of land in Cornwall for the new school. So the next line is, how do we break those two parts of the surplus down? I won't bore you with the details of the unappropriated portion of the accumulated surplus because it's unappropriated. There's no constraints on it. But the internally appropriated portion of it, here's how previous boards have constrained this. We have basically a risk reserve for WSIB in the amount of $2.4 million. School budgets, as I mentioned, are protected. So when schools at the end of a fiscal year have a surplus, that becomes part of the board's accumulated surplus. And those are protected as part of the internally appropriated portion. So when you see school budget surpluses, $3.7 million there, which represents the sum total of all school surpluses from previous years. UCLC, they have a risk reserve that has been approved by their board. And again, that's protected as part of our internally appropriated surplus, 3.7. Champions for Kids has $100,000. There's some committed sinking fund interest in there. which the ripe sum of $0.0 million. It's very trivial, but really just to cover interest on previous capital projects, legacy capital projects, and then funds associated with committed capital projects. These would be committed capital projects would be, as trustees may be aware, long ago the government put restrictions on our ability to do facility enhancements to administrative offices. And so there's a mechanism in here which allows us to put small amounts of money away to do routine things like roofs and things on a building like this, but not dipping into school renewal or capital renewal that is intended for schools. The externally appropriated portion of the surplus, and this is the part that we can't touch, includes interest on debentures that are carried to support capital projects. And this is really just a timing issue. So the ministry funds most of this stuff, but not on the same cycle, that business cycle that we have. So what you can expect is that that will be funded at some point during the course of the school year. We also include school-generated funds here. So school-generated funds are distinct from school budgets in that they are the funds that school councils will fundraise for in the course of a school year. And that's distinct from the budget we would provide a school to operate. So when a community generates school-generated funds, those are beyond the board's ability to touch those funds. Those are sort of sequestered and not available to the board to meet its other requirements with. And again, as I mentioned, revenues recognized for land. We have to balance the purchases that we make on land here in this line. So this year, when we bought land in Cornwall for around $11 million, this increased to the tune of $11 million by virtue of the fact that we added that land as an asset as well. And then asset retirement obligations. As I mentioned in a previous year, this is something that's relatively new, an accounting requirement that when we have a facility, if there is something in the facility, could be asbestos, it could be some sort of material that we would have to clean up as a result of selling that property eventually, we have to actually acknowledge that from an accounting perspective, and this is where we would acknowledge that. So that would represent the sum total of the obligations we would theoretically incur if we were to retire all of our facilities all at once. On the next slide, trustees have, in previous years, back in 2019, this wasn't a problem when we had a deficit. We weren't concerned too much about the size of the surplus, but as surpluses grew through the course of COVID, particularly because we were constrained in our ability to spend because kids weren't in school, surpluses grew rather rapidly. And I think there's been talk about, well, how big a surplus is appropriate to carry. And one thing we've wanted to assure trustees over the course of the years is that it's, I think, very healthy for us to have a healthy accumulated surplus. It's healthy for our provincial government to have school districts that have healthy accumulated surpluses. But it also, the corollary to that is it doesn't make sense for us to sit on $1 billion. It doesn't make sense for us to just grow these things like crazy. So what we've been trying to do over the course of the last few years is grow, is still have surpluses, but much smaller surpluses. And the way we've been measuring that is how big is our surplus as a percentage of our in-year operating revenue. And so what you see here is that in 2019, 2020, our in-year surplus was about 2% of our operating revenue. And every year since that time, we've tried to manage more sharply by so that our surpluses are getting smaller and smaller and smaller throughout the course of the year. And that's not a reflection of, we're not trying to run a deficit here, but we are trying to make sure that as much of the money that comes in as possible gets out to support the needs of kids in our community. And because it's not helping kids if we have tons of it sitting on especially on a year-to-year basis. So I think what you see here is 24-25, we've continued that trend. Our annual operating surplus, $1.7 million though it is, still represents what I would consider a sliver or 0.4% of our in-year operating revenue, which is really like trying to hit a very, very small target far out. So I think just a great testament to the work of the entire team around the table about sort of a collective attitude towards financial management. And you guys know this one because it's close to the end. So this is what's important from the ministry standpoint is that our financials are compliant at all times. And that sometimes or mostly means that we should be planning a surplus and we should be running a surplus. But there is some latitude there. They do, from time to time, with ministry permission, allow us to run a deficit should we be able to justify that there's no other way that that can happen. But we can't run an infinitely large deficit. In fact, they would consider a compliant deficit to be anything that is less than 1% of our operating allocation, or about $4 million. But we don't have to worry about that because we've run a $1.7 million surplus. So our overall board expenses are in line with what the ministry considers to be compliant. They look closely at our administrative and governance expenses, which represents the cost of all of us around the table. We're well within their allowance on administration and governance. And they've also introduced some new requirements on facilities and transportation compliance, but we are fully compliant there as well. So all things considered, a good news story for the board. Just some management observations as we wrap up. Very tumultuous year with the cyber incident and revenue adjustment. The prior period revenue adjustment, but I think it's a great sign about the resilience of our organization that we'll be able to accommodate that kind of thing within a given year with a little bit of luck. We continue to show healthy financial results. And as the chair pointed out earlier, we're delivering programs that kids need and seeing positive results across the board from in our core business, which is instruction. We've shown success in sharpening our internal in-year financial forecast. So, even 2% as an in-year surplus is pretty thin, but 0.4 is certainly very thin. So I think we've heard the message and we're trying to make sure that we stay in the black, but just making sure that the resources that kids need get to them. We're estimated that even though our overall accumulated surplus is getting into the healthy territory, we're still in the bottom half of school boards across the province when it comes to the magnitude of our accumulated surplus. And I would say that it's good news, but we are still keeping a close eye on transportation because we know that funding impact is going to hit in 27, 28, and we are working and encouraging STIO to work on making sure that we've got sort of timely ideas on how to accommodate that. So in summary, 24-25 fiscal year, UCDSB is reporting a $1.7 million in-year surplus for compliance. I think great news, largely attributable, believe it or not, when trustees voted last year to close the old Central Public School in Cornwall, which is a TR Leger site for almost 20 years now. We were pleased to find out that by closing that, we also became eligible for another $1.2 million a year in top-up funding. So that helps. So decisions like those things that have good financial implications are certainly helpful when you have tricky years. We've got an in-year accumulated surplus for compliance of $33.1 million, or 8% of the core ed operating revenue. We still are, as always, we wouldn't be finance people if we weren't advocating continued conservatism to be able to respond to the changes in the funding model. But I think we've demonstrated, and the team has certainly demonstrated, that nimbleness. That is, like, when things are good, we know where to put additional money because we have the director's work plan. And when things are looking like they're going to be tough, we have strategies for adjusting. And I think, remain really well positioned to continue our program of improvements in instruction. So that represents it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent report with lots of really good information. Are there any questions that you might have based on the information that you received? Trustee McDonald.
Not many questions, just comments. I do need to clarify, it was Central Public and Prescott, not Cornwall, because we'd send a lot of panic through families in Cornwall if we suddenly said that Central Public in Cornwall was closing. I want to just acknowledge the good work that the board has done over the course of the year. This is the summary of 24-25. And tonight online with us in support, there's a number of attachments to this report. And so you do have our financial statements that have been reviewed by an external auditor. And Nick Blanchard here from BDO is on the line. Diana Kingston is on the line. A number of people put a lot of time and effort into preparing the financial statements, which is that external view of, did we do everything that we were supposed to do from an accounting perspective? Chief Business Officer Hobbs talked about the compliance piece and how are we meeting the expectations from the ministry. all important aspects of what we need to do as an organization. In order to do that, that happens pretty quickly. Our year ends August 31st. We have November 15th to be able to submit documents to the ministry. And so when you think about the amount of expenses, the amount of revenue that we have that needs to be reviewed on a regular basis, the team from BDO and Diana and her team make it happen year after year. So a thank you to Diana and her team, Jessica, and the entire team to make sure that this is in a good position, and working collaboratively with our external auditor, BDO and Annette Blanchard. And to thank you to them for making sure that, that we do meet our requirements from the ministry. What you saw tonight from a compliance perspective is really important. And, you know, Chief Business Officer Hobbs talked a couple of times about the nimbleness of the organization. And that's as a result of the structure that we've established with this board. We set clear direction. We allow the director to put a plan in place and have some things that he can pull off the shelf here and there when we do find those opportunities to go out and spend some extra money. The nimbleness allows us to be successful. We've heard and seen that results are increasing. We've heard and seen that we're getting more students. Everything is moving in the right direction for Upper Canada. And I think that, you know, I'm going to boast a little bit, but we should be proud, and I am proud of the work that we've done as a school board, because when I look across the province, the bar is pretty low from many of the other boards. So I think that we should be going into our communities and talking about how we run this organization and the confidence that the public should have in what we do to provide great outcomes for kids, but are good financial stewards of the money that we have to make sure that happens. I think it was slide 11 where Chief Business Officer Hobbs talked about the projection or I guess the decline of what our surplus looked like. And you know, even at almost 2%, it's really difficult to be able to manage that on a $400 million budget. We're into the $450 million dollar amount now, and to be less than 0.5, we're at 0.4%. That again highlights the nimbleness of this organization to be able to do great things for kids, but stay above the line, that it doesn't impact future work that we can do. So, you know, I thank a number of people. I want to thank Chief Business Officer Hobbs for the work that he's done, the director, the entire senior team, to be able to get us into this position, an enviable position, quite honestly, from across the province. But more importantly, that we've done it by getting great outcomes for kids. And so it's something to be proud about. It's something that we should talk about in our communities. And it's a great opportunity for us to feel good about what we've been doing. Thank you.
Well said. Trustee McAllister, you have a question?
Yes, I do, Chair. It's a question to Mr. Hobbs, and I want to predicate my question with a comment, and that is that I certainly applaud your ability to present a very complicated topic in a comprehensible manner. So congratulations on that. As you know, Mr. Hobbs, I love surpluses, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a question. And it concerns the double entry of the Bill 124 $6 million issue. And here's my question, and I perhaps should know the answer to this, but perhaps you can elucidate. Why could we not use $6 million from the unappropriated accumulated surplus rather than constrict existing budgets?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the simple answer to that is that, as you saw on the slide with the speedometer type compliance gauge, even if we wanted to run a deficit, the maximum deficit we could run and remain compliant would be $4 million. So number one is even if we considered that to be a viable strategy, we wouldn't be able to cover the full $6 million amount and remain compliant. And I think, then the next question becomes, why not run a deficit? And as you'd see from, I think, one of the slides where I showed you the evolution of forecasts for 24-25 throughout the school year, in the April 25 forecast, we were in fact projecting a deficit because we had just suffered the cyber attack. We'd incurred enormous expenses to recover and also provide things like credit monitoring services and so on to those things affected. So we're not adverse to running a deficit if we absolutely need to run a deficit. However, I think there's no question in our minds that for the purposes of public confidence and certainly in these times, it is better if you can to run a surplus. And what we did when we confronted both the cyber attack and that double entry issue was that we went back to our respective departments, and the first criteria was, let's see if we can find ways that we can defer things or those kinds of things into a fiscal year, which is a matter of months. It's only a couple of months to defer something. It's not stop things forever. And it was, and we found that we could come up with a plan that had no adverse impact on anybody and that people around the table felt good about. So I think that the short answer to this is the reason why we chose not to run a deficit is because it was possible without an adverse impact. And I think that the opposite is true, which is, while we have demonstrated, I think, a willingness to entertain a deficit under the appropriate circumstances, if it's reasonable for us to avoid it, we certainly will.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion that is on the table, and I would ask you to cast your vote online.
I don't even know what this next one is.
That motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 15.3, capital priorities update to board. And just to switch things up, we'll get Chief Business Officer Hobbs to bring us that report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had to have Superintendent McNair remind me what my next presentation was about. We'll try to keep this quick, and it's, I think, a good news story for the board. From time to time, as trustees know, I come to the board and give you an update on where we stand with capital. The reason why is simple. The numbers are very big. We're doing $97 million over 2 years in just school renewal projects alone, not counting construction. And so in recognition, of course, and respect for your oversight role that you have, it's important for you to understand that where the capital budget is going, and so you can communicate with your communities as well. So just the summary is the Ministry of Ed continues to invest heavily in improvements to school facilities. It's been candidly astonishing for my almost 20 years in school facilities, probably over $1 billion in our jurisdiction in school renewal and school construction in that time. Successive governments, and particularly this government, have been extraordinarily generous in supporting our renewal needs. These are through renewal, school condition improvement, and what you'll hear about is RAC, if you're not familiar with that term already, reinforced aerated autoclaved concrete, affectionately known to Eastern Ontarians as CIPREX. New funding for that this year. Where the ministry is continuing to provide support for boards to propose new buildings and additions, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And again, as I said, we're forecasting to spend about $100 million in capital renewal over the next two years or 3 fiscal years. And that includes district strategies on air conditioning, improving track facilities, and also washroom safety, which we thought we'd highlight. And of course, designs, we're progressing on designs for the new Cornwall High School and Cambridge High School, both of which are expected to be tendered for construction in 2026. So dividing the presentation into 2 major sections, we'll talk about renewal of existing facilities and then new construction. What we're trying to do is give you here a bit of an evolution of what our school renewal funding looks like over a number of years. Basically, what you see here is that we've got between the last two columns on the slide, just under $100 million total in funding that's going out the door in the next couple of years. Some things that we'd like to talk about are, number one is major sources of funding are renewal, school condition improvement, and also, as I mentioned, in 25-26, the ministry has given us funding to replace and repair SIPREX. So if trustees are familiar with the Ontario Science Centre, you'll be aware last year the Ontario Science Centre closed because it has this stuff called RAC, reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete. We've known about this for years. We have many of our schools that have it in it. And in fact, we conduct regular inspections on our schools all the time and are a leader among school boards in the province on managing this. So many of our schools have it. It's just tricky to manage because it requires constant oversight. In the September timeframe, it was announced that we got another $30 million to repair SIPREX in schools, and with the expectation that we'll have all of that committed to projects in August. So that's on top of the other $97 million. So really, it's a pretty busy year for our 9 people in the facilities department. We've actually ramped up spending significantly for the next couple of years. So you'll see that activity reflected in schools as you travel around the district. What's really challenging about it, I would say mostly, is that we tend to have a very fixed construction timeline. We can do construction when the kids aren't in school, which is more or less July and August. And if you want to spend a lot more money in the same period of time, you have to do bigger projects. So it's quite tricky. And I think if I were to say one thing that you'll likely see if you're talking to principals or in schools or in your communities, is that the construction timelines will tend to some extent overlap into June and September now, just because we don't have enough time to accomplish the scale and scope of work that we're trying to accomplish. But my team and our contractors are well versed in keeping kids safe and keeping the instructional environment separate from disruptions as much as possible. So moving on to the next slide, just a few highlights about how we're spending that money. So about a year ago, I asked my staff for a strategy on how we could get to air conditioning in all our schools. And I'm going to be candid with you, it's going to take quite a long time, but we actually now have a district-wide strategy. Coming out of COVID, as you'll know, one of the concerns was ventilation in schools and making sure that we were bringing fresh air into schools and cycling the air. Because of the age of our facilities, not all of our schools had those kinds of heating systems, but now they do. So all our schools are fully ventilated now. And we are now progressing on with an air conditioning strategy where we're going to start working across our district in a systematic way to make sure that thermal comfort is a part of the learning environment for kids. So we've got about 15 full school air conditioning projects in the planning and execution phases. So that, started happening the last summer in 2025 and will continue on for the foreseeable future. As we mentioned as well on the next slide, we're actually taking a similarly systematic approach to looking at track and field facilities at our schools. One thing we did with the support of a consultant in last year or the year before was had the consultant look at all of our track facilities across our schools and say, it'd be really nice if various regions of our board had access to an OFSA level track or an EASA level track or a sort of a county level track and field environment. And not all of our schools you can't just put an OFSA track at all of our schools because you don't own enough property. So we looked at the sites that are conducive and came up with a strategy. So we're going to be systematically going around school to school over the coming years to just do those upgrades as well. And what we're going to do is we've already got an OFSA level track here in Brockville. As you'll see later, we're proposing a new high school in Carleton Place where we would also build an OFSA level track. And with the new high school in Cornwall, it's also our plan to build it there as well. So at least regionally, we'll have closer access for those things. And again, that's going to be something that rolls out across our district. One of the hot spots that we've heard from schools over the last few years is around washroom safety, where kids and how they, through our Amplify student voice survey. We're hearing from students that they're concerned about the safety of washrooms. We're hearing from staff about how to supervise washrooms. And so, we know that the built environment is only one part of what it takes to be safe in a washroom. Like, you just can't construct a perfectly safe washroom under all conditions. However, we've actually engaged an architect and a couple of pilot schools to look at how we can actually reconfigure washrooms to make them easier to supervise, to give and make them a safer place for students to be able to use and feel comfortable in. Those are happening at Perth and one at TIS as well. We'll also include a pilot on vape sensors as well to combat that. So that's something that the facilities department is working on. Certainly, I would just emphasize that that doesn't represent all $97 million of renewal. There's a lot more going on about roofs and boilers and parking lots and those kinds of things, but we just did want to highlight some things that are reflective of kind of what we've heard from our communities and through the director's work plan. With respect to new builds and additions, trustees are aware that from time to time the ministry allocates sums of money that they open up for what we would consider to be new builds and additions, and they invite proposals from school boards, and this is called the Capital Priorities Program. Basically, it's the only way you can get funding to build a new school or to build an addition onto a school, and it's on a business case-based approach. So we look at the cost to operate an existing school with portables over a period of time, and we compare it to the cost to build an addition or to build an entirely new school over the same period of time. And ideally what happens is you demonstrate it's cheaper to do a new build than to keep what you've got and go from there. We've actually, they invite those proposals annually. We submit them annually. Example of some of the projects we've done in recent years: Swiftwaters Elementary opened in 2024, addition at Williamstown Public School, September 23. Addition at Westminster Public School opened in September 2023. Childcare addition at Kempville Public School opened in September 2022. North Granville District High School addition opened September 2021. And we just built the new school in September 2012. And we've also got, of course, the new Cornwall Secondary School that is planned to open in 2029, and an addition at Cambridge Public School, which is scheduled to be open in September 2028. Just to give you a sense of what are the projects that we proposed this year for the Capital Priorities Program. Well, here's the list. We proposed an addition at Cornwall High School, believe it or not, school that's not even built. We're proposing an addition to it. This is just an idiosyncrasy of the way you apply for expansions. So in the course of the years that have intervened since we originally got funding for Cornwall, enrollments increased, projected enrollments increased at that school to the point where a new addition would be required for about 400 pupil places. So that represents our top priority, simply because we don't want to open a new school with 20 portables. And it's much cheaper to build the school as an 1,800 pupil place facility than it is to build the school and then an addition a couple years later. Our second priority is Carleton Place High School. We're proposing a replacement for 1,800 pupil places, about the same size as the Cornwall School. We're also proposing this is as I referred to earlier this evening in my enrollment presentation, we feel that the town of Carleton Place now merits a net new elementary school, so not an addition to Beckwith as has been previously proposed, but an entirely new elementary school for 500 pupil places. We're seeing that an addition at Montague Public School is warranted. And we have a replacement for Emer's Corners, a replacement for Maynard and Wellington, which has been on the list for a number of years. Maynard also happens to be the school that is in the most, I think has the most SIPREX or RAC in it of any school in our district. So to us, it makes more sense to replace the school than basically pull all the RAC out and build a new school around it. And then Caldwell, which is also in the same situation as Maynard with RAC as well. Those proposals have been advanced to the ministry, and we're expecting to hear from them in the early spring or late winter. New Cornwall Secondary School. So we're really excited to be finally moving on this. I feel Trustee McDonald may also be cautiously optimistic. And what you see here is a rendering of the actual design for the new school. As it stands right now, it's a 1,400 pupil place facility. There's $39 million in funding that was allocated in 2017, but it will be substantially more. So we've got a request for the actual amount that it's going to cost. All we're trying to do is determine whether we're building a 1,400 pupil place school or an 1,800 pupil place school or a 1,400 pupil place school with a 400 pupil place addition on it. But we're going to require more money. We're almost at 90% done of the design, so we're actually in the throes of doing our last or second to last cost estimate now. And all our applications to the ministry have been completed for requests for enlargement. And the site control application, which is a major final step before construction has been submitted to the City of Cornwall. We're hoping for news back from them on that, or approval, I should say, mid-January. So that's on track, and just provided that announcements and approvals go on a timely manner, we'll be fine with that project. So just with respect to the risks on that project, as I mentioned, we're relying on City of Cornwall for site plan approval, but we have a good relationship with the planning committee there, or the planning department there. And we're hoping for mid-January approval there. As I mentioned, we're waiting on ministry scope approvals to determine the actual size of the school, and also ministry budget approval for the incremental funding that will be required to construct that school at $2025. As I mentioned earlier in my enrollment presentation, Russell High School, or Russell Family Schools, has grown enormously over the course of the last 5 years. And so Cambridge was the school I was talking about when I said at one point in my tenure it was almost empty. It needed portables, then it didn't need portables, then it needed an addition, then it needed another addition, and now it's getting the addition to end all additions, which is a 427 pupil place addition, the size of a school unto itself. And it's going to be planned to open in September 2028. And just a classic example of a case where probably 10 years down the road, if that community continues to experience continued growth, we'll be looking at a net new school there in the same way that we are in Carleton Place as well. But this is progressing very well. I provided you this slide just as information because you hear me speak about capital priorities every year. I give you the list of priorities that we've submitted, and people would rightly wonder, well, why did some things get added to the list and why did some things come off the list? Well, the simple answer is the things in green, we built those. Those were awarded funding and we got the funding, so they naturally come off the list. Some things stay on the list, and we try to get feedback from the Ministry of Education on why it was unsuccessful. We think it was a good business case, like Caldwell and Maynard, but they don't award it, so we keep trying. There are some on there that, like if you look at something like the South Branch edition or the KPS edition, those were things that were, I think, presented a good business case when we were planning on closing Oxford on Rideau Public School. And when we decided not to close Oxford on Rideau Public School, there's no business case for those additions anymore. So we don't see the need for those as it stands at that time. And so basically what I wanted to show you is that if you're noticing from year to year that the list changes somewhat, I agree. It is changing somewhat, but that's a reflection of our staff's sort of attention to where those enrollment hotspots are across our district and where we think and how we think the needs of the organization are sort of evolving over time. So in summary, I think this is great news. You're getting hundreds of millions of dollars from the Ministry of Education to renew our schools. And I know we have some schools that are newer and some schools that are older than others, but I'm very comfortable that all our schools are great places for kids to learn and for staff to work. And we pay assiduous attention with the support of our health and safety department and with student voice and staff voice to address the priorities for our schools. We have an ambitious agenda to spend that sort of a backlog of facilities renewal money that sort of piled up during COVID when we couldn't crank projects out. And you're going to see that plow through by August 2026. You'll have that full almost $100 million committed fully to projects by contract. I think, the other thing I wanted you to see is that we've got a track record of building successfully. So we've had lots of new builds and additions over the course of the last 20 years. And once we get land, usually, we crank those out pretty fast. So we're on time and on budget with virtually every project once we get through that initial land hurdle. And finally, I just wanted to share with you, of course, our capital priorities for this year, our list. And we're anxiously awaiting some feedback from the Ministry of Education on what, if any, they will fund in the early winter, spring timeframe. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, we should be grateful to the ministry for the support that they have given us. I mean, it's reassuring that they've been so responsive to our needs over the last number of years. And we also should be generous to the folks that put together those business cases. Obviously, the ministry is inundated with such things, but whoever is putting those together is obviously doing a pretty good job for us to be getting the support that we're getting. So, yeah, I think we should be thankful for the support that we do get. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, student trustee Musa.
Through you, Chair. Just curious as to what, if any, student voice or involvement is included in the washroom safety strategy, and if that's a plan for the action plan in spring, or if it's something that's happening now.
It's actually happening now, and the principals of the schools, to my knowledge, have engaged students at their schools. So just recently, we had what we call a design charrette with architects, where principals and my staff got together with architects to talk about designs that that have been working at other schools and other districts. And to my understanding, the principals of those schools are going to take them back for feedback.
Moving on to item 15.4, the 2024-25 annual report from the Audit Committee to the Board of Trustees for submission to the Ministry of Education. The chair of the Audit Committee is Trustee McDonald. I will read the motion first, and then we'll have time for discussion and any questions. Moved by Trustee McDonald, seconded by Trustee Robertson, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve the 2024-25 annual report from the Audit Committee to the Board of Trustees for the fiscal year ending August 31st, 2025. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you. I was going to, because Chief Business Officer was such a good flow, I was going to let him continue. It's pretty straightforward. There's a form here that's attached that indicates the progress or the work that's been conducted as a result of the regional internal audit team. You'll see that there's a special education benchmarking review that was completed. Attendance management is in progress, and safe schools engagement was completed. This is all work that was conducted by the regional internal audit team and presented to the audit committee in 24-25. Happy to answer any questions for the public portion of this report.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, I would ask you to cast your vote online. That motion passes unanimously, and thank you, Trustee McDonald, for your leadership on that committee. Item 15.5, the Special Education Advisory Committee. The report to the board for October 7th, 2025 meeting. And the chair of SEAC is Trustee Labonte.
Thank
Turn
you.
that over to him.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I was similarly going to ask Chief Business Officer to give my presentation because he was doing so well. SEAC met last on October 7th, and it was our last hybrid meeting for a little while. We had a discussion about future meetings, and because there are so many people on the committee that live quite a distance away, we are going to a largely Teams-based meeting process for at least the next couple of months during the winter months. So as part of our mandated purpose, we reviewed and updated the first part, actually 30 pages, of the 26-27 proposed special education plan. And some details, budget updates coming in the spring of 2026 will be required to complete the plan. Also, some sections pertaining to parameters and directives from the ministry in the document will be also updated once they are provided. We then had some significant discussion about updates and changes to the Community Treatment and Care Program, which is better known as CTEP, and the Education Community Partnerships Program, also known as ECPP. We then discussed and modified most of the winter SEAC meetings, as I mentioned earlier. And our final presentation of the evening actually was from Julie Burns, who represents the Ontario Parents of Visually Impaired Children, better known as OPVIC. And this agency has been very active throughout the province and has an excellent, recently updated website. And there are a lot of details of not just the OPVIC presentation, but the other details mentioned in updating the plan. And that's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Chair Labonte? Seeing none, I want to thank you, Chair Labonte, for your leadership of that important committee. Before we move on to item 15.6, I want to welcome Trustee Dr. MacDonald to our meeting. We managed to get most of our technical difficulties sorted out. And when it comes to voting, we can see you. If you just raise your hand, we will include you in the vote. So welcome. We look forward to working with you. Item 15.6 is Policy 312, which is a draft policy on the trustee honorarium. And so I have a motion. It is moved by Trustee MacDonald and seconded by Trustee Labonte that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 312, the trustee honorarium with revisions as presented on November 12th, 2025. And on the screen? Oh, okay, super. Okay, so the revisions to the policy include, in accordance with the Education Act and Ontario Regulation 35706, it is in the policy of the Upper Canada District School Board that members of the Board of Trustees will be paid an honorarium. The honorarium will include the base amount, enrollment amount, and attendance amount as defined in the Upper Canada District School Board Procedure 312.1. The honorarium is payable to elected trustees and First Nation representatives appointed pursuant to Ontario Regulation 46297. Student trustees are not subject to UCDSB Policy 312 or UCDSB Procedure 312.1, as they are paid an honorarium pursuant to Ontario Regulation 707. Is there any question or commentary on this Policy 312, draft policy? No? All right, well, then we will go to the vote online. Please cast your vote online. Yes. And Dr. MacDonald, if you raise your hand indicating in favor, that would be good. Okay, super. All right. Thank you for that. And I am in favor as well. I lost my screen. And that carries unanimously as well. Which brings us to item 16.1. These are information items and correspondence. They're information only. No discussion is necessary at this time. Item 17.1, we are moving into Committee of the Whole and private session. As per the Education Act, the closing of certain committee meetings, a meeting of a committee of a board, including a committee of the whole board, may be closed to the public when the subject matter falls under one of 5 reasons listed within the Education Act under Section 207, subsection 2. Committee of the Whole will convene in private session November 12th, 2025, and 3 matters will be discussed, 2 under Section A and 1 under Section B. So I have 2 motions. The first motion, moved by Trustee Swan, thank you, and seconded by Trustee Steinberg. that the Upper Canada District School Board move into regular meeting Committee of the Whole, November 12th, 2025 at 8:08 p.m. Please cast your vote online. And that motion carries unanimously, which takes us to motion 2 of 2, moved by Trustee Danaher, seconded by Trustee Robertson, that Committee of the Whole move into private session on November 12th, 2025. Please cast your vote online. And that motion also passes unanimously. So we will be moving into a private session, and the ceremonial passing of the gavel to Vice Chair has occurred. Those who are not required to be here. We will take a brief 5-minute break to clear the room of those who do not need to attend, and then reconvene in 5 minutes.